Hey everyone and welcome back. So if you are here, you're probably thinking about taking the IELTS reading test
Mm.
and maybe wondering how to boost that score.
Hmm.
We've tapped into the power of AI,
Right.
you know,
Right.
to analyze tons of expert advice,
Mm.
and we've got some really actionable strategies to share with you.
Excellent.
And by the way, if you're
Yeah.
curious about where we got all this info, we've put links for you down in the description.
It's amazing, how many people think they can't get a good score on the IELTS if English isn't their first language.
Hmm.
It's just not true.
Hmm.
Anyone can do really well with the right approach.
It's easy to look at all those words and feel intimidated, right?
Oh, it is.
But here's the thing. The test isn't about knowing every single word.
That's true.
It's about getting the ideas.
You got it.
That's the important part.
It really is. Think of it this way. The reading test is designed to see how well you understand what you read,
Okay.
not just how many words you know. So it's about, can you get the main idea? Can you find specific information?
So even if there are words you don't know, you can still do well.
Exactly. It's more about being a smart reader than having a huge vocabulary.
You know, it's interesting.
Right.
Sometimes people lose points because of small mistakes,
Uh-huh.
like little spelling errors,
Yeah.
which is so easy to do when you're trying to understand a difficult text.
It really is. You're focused on the big picture,
Right.
and those small things can slip through.
Exactly. And they can really make a difference to your score.
Absolutely. Taking a moment to double check your answers, that can make a big difference.
So important. Take your time and review everything carefully.
Yes.
Every point matters.
For sure.
And speaking of time, we all know the IELTS reading test is timed.
Yes.
60 minutes
That's all you get.
to answer 40 questions about 3 long reading passages.
It can be a lot.
It sounds pretty intense, like a race against the clock.
It can feel that way.
So how can we use our time wisely?
Being strategic is key.
Okay.
It's not about reading every single word as fast as you can. You need to learn to skim and scan.
Skimming and scanning.
Yes, those are your best friends.
Can you explain those a little more in relation to the IELTS?
Sure. So skimming means you glance over the text quickly to get the main idea.
Okay.
You're not reading every word carefully. You just want the general gist. And scanning is when you look for specific information like a name or a date,
Okay.
something mentioned in the question.
So you're saying we don't need to read every single word.
You don't have to read every single word, no.
That's good to know. But if we're not reading carefully, how do we know where to look for the answers?
Well, that's where understanding the test structure helps.
Okay.
The questions usually follow the order of the information in the passage.
So,
So if you find the answer to question 1,
uh-huh.
you know the answer to question 2 will be somewhere after that.
Oh, that makes sense.
And that can save you a lot of time.
That's really helpful. Like the questions are giving us clues.
They are.
What about those really tricky questions that everyone seems to struggle with?
Oh, you mean the ones that make you doubt yourself?
Exactly.
Yes. Well, there are definitely some challenging question types on the IELTS reading, like true, false, not given, and matching headings. Those can be tough.
I bet.
But don't worry, there are strategies you can use to tackle them.
I'd love to hear about those strategies.
Well, to those.
Okay, great. But before we move on, let's talk about vocabulary for a minute.
Sure.
You said earlier that we don't need to know every single word,
Right.
but we do need to have some vocabulary.
Yes. Vocabulary is important for the IELTS reading test.
Okay.
But you don't need to panic if you don't know every word.
Right.
That's totally normal.
So what's the trick to dealing with words you don't know on the test?
Focus on the keywords in the questions, and then look for synonyms or paraphrases of those keywords in the passage.
Okay.
Pay attention to the context around the words you don't know.
It can often give you clues about their meaning.
So it's like being a detective.
Exactly.
You're using the clues to solve the mystery of the reading passage.
That's a great way to think about it.
This is making me feel a lot more confident about the IELTS reading test.
That's great to hear.
I'm ready to tackle it.
Excellent. Now let's talk about those tricky question types. You mentioned matching headings.
Oh, yeah. Those can be tough.
Yeah.
What makes them so challenging?
Well, with matching headings, you have a list of headings,
Right.
and you need to match each heading to the right paragraph in the passage.
I see.
The hard part is figuring out the main idea of each paragraph and then picking the heading that sums it up best.
So we need to be able to see the big picture
Exactly.
without getting lost in all the details.
Yes. Are there any tips for doing that?
Well, one thing that can help is to start by reading all the headings carefully.
Okay.
Try to get a feel for the different topics and themes they cover. Then skim each paragraph in the passage.
Yeah, just focus on the first and last sentences.
Okay,
They often give you a good idea of the main point.
I see.
As you're skimming, think about which heading matches the overall message of the paragraph.
So it's like connecting the dots.
Exactly. It's like a puzzle.
Mm.
Now, what about true, false? Not given questions.
Those are tricky too.
They really throw me off. What makes them so difficult?
With true, false, not given questions, you have to really analyze the information in the passage
Right.
and compare it to the statements in the questions.
Right.
You need to decide if each statement is true according to the passage
Uh-huh.
or false according to the passage,
Oh.
or if the passage doesn't say anything about it at all.
That's the part that gets me the not given option.
I know it can be confusing.
How do we know if something's really not given, or if we just haven't found the information yet?
Here's a key tip. If you can't find anything in the passage that directly supports or contradicts the statement, then it's probably not given.
So we don't need to waste time searching for information that might not be there.
Right.
Okay, so if it's not clearly stated in the passage, we can probably mark it as not given.
Exactly.
Any other advice for true, false, not given questions?
Yes. Pay close attention to keywords in the statements.
Keywords.
Yeah, especially words like some, always, never.
Why those words?
They can really change the meaning of a statement.
Ah.
Also, be careful with statements that are only partly true.
How do you mean?
If any part of the statement is false or not given, then the whole statement is considered false or not given.
Gotcha. Those little words are important.
They are. They can be very tricky.
So we've talked about time management, skimming, and scanning unfamiliar vocabulary, and some of those tough question types.
Right.
Is there anything else we should keep in mind?
There are a couple more things.
Okay, what are they?
First, don't leave any answers blank.
Even if we're not sure of the answer.
Even if you're not sure, it's always better to guess than to leave it blank.
Oh, that's right. There are no penalties for wrong answers.
Exactly. So it's
Yeah.
worth taking a guess.
That's a good point. It's like a free chance to get it right.
Right. And the second thing, be very careful when you transfer your answers to the answer sheet.
Oh, yeah. That's important.
Make sure you're putting the right answers next to the right question numbers.
Easy to make a mistake there.
It is, especially when you're under pressure.
So double check everything before you hand in your test.
Always double check. It could save you from a lot of trouble later.
Better to be safe than sorry.
Absolutely. And one last tip.
What's that?
Try to stay calm and focused during the test.
Easier said than done sometimes.
I know, but if you start to feel overwhelmed, just take a few deep breaths
Okay.
and remind yourself of all the strategies you've learned.
Right, we've got this.
You do?
It's really encouraging to hear about all these helpful strategies. I feel like I have a much better understanding of what to expect now and how to approach the reading test.
I'm glad to hear that. Preparation is key. The more you familiarize yourself with the format, the question types, and the strategies we've talked about, the more confident you'll feel on test day.
So practice really does make perfect.
It does. And don't be afraid to experiment with different approaches when you practice.
Like what?
Well, some people like to read the questions first before they look at the passage, and others prefer to skim the passage first to get a general idea.
So it's all about finding what works best for you.
Exactly. It's like finding the right tool for the job.
We've talked about a lot of different strategies, and it seems like there's no one right way to do it.
That's true. What works best for one person might not work as well for another. The key is to find a set of strategies that you feel good about and that you can use when you're under pressure.
So for our listener who's out there getting ready to take the IELTS reading test, what's the one thing you want them to remember from our conversation today?
I want them to remember that they can get a high score on the IELTS reading test. It's not impossible. It takes work and preparation, but with the right strategies and a positive attitude, they can succeed.
That's a great message to end on. It's so easy to get intimidated by these tests, but we can do it. We have the power to prepare ourselves and do our best.
You absolutely do.
Plus, we've got AI on our side helping us analyze all the expert advice.
That's right.
And don't forget to check out the links in the description
Yes.
for even more tips and resources.
There's lots of helpful information there.
Well, I feel like we've learned so much today.
Me too.
We talked about time management, scheming, and scanning those tricky question types.
It's been a great discussion.
I hope our listeners got a lot out of it.
I hope so too.
And if you found this helpful and you're already a friend of the show, be sure to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more insightful conversations.
We'll have lots more to share.
Thanks for joining us.